This vast area of sea is called Atlantic Ocean. As you can see, the shape is almost letter S. As for the upper area, that is, North Atlantic Ocean, we already saw very peculiar things in Seafloor Archaeology 7. Now we are going to focus on the under part, South Atlantic Ocean. I'm going to show you a gigantic maze. There seems to be no need for so-called natural or artificial argument, I hope. Or do you happen to insist this is a natural formation caused by natural forces alone? This is not a scribble on a sheet of paper. This is a huge undersea structure designed and civil engineered by high intelligence. I say huge, not big. A scientist once said that we know a lot more about the moon than the deep sea on Earth. Aquatic world is so alien for us humans to dive in and colonize. We have been more interested in dry surface of the moon far away than liquid environment of our own planet in front of us. So about 70% of the surface of Earth hasn't been opened up simply because we don't have gills. So we humans have been satisfied with 30% share of the surface of this planet, leaving 70% almost intact as colony. Extraterrestrials. ET stands for extraterrestrial. An extraterrestrial means intellectual beings living outside the Earth. But this word, extraterrestrial, has inevitable connotation that humans are the only intellectual race on the Earth. The word ET tacitly means that the Earth is the exclusive home of humans. And if other intellectual races ever exist in the universe, they must exist somewhere outside the Earth. This planet, Earth, is already occupied by human beings. So, this planet is our home and not others. In other words, we humans have thought that we have natural right to monopolize this home planet. This assumption might have been based on our sheer ignorance about the history of this planet. Let's check the size. Size. Google Earth shows a scale at the bottom. We are going to use this to measure the size of this gigantic maze. In this picture we see a scale of 20 kilometers at the bottom. When it comes to 20 kilometers, there's a very convenient ruler. Manhattan Island is approximately 20 kilometers long. And it is considered to be almost an icon of modern civilization. The width is about 4 kilometers. So the ratio of width to length is about 1 to 5. There is a rectangular park in the middle. And it has a very uninspiring name, that is, Central Park. The length of the park is 4 kilometers, and by chance or by design, the width is just the 1/5 of the length, 800 meters. In this grid, each cell is 20 kilometers by 20 kilometers. By simple counting, we can tell that this gigantic maze is the length of 26 Manhattan Islands in east-west direction and 11 Manhattan Islands in north-south direction. The length of 520 kilometers is very impressive for an artificial structure on this planet. Please compare the similar size on the land of this planet. They are not artificial structures at all but only borders or geographic contours. That means they are no artificial entity. Most of them are practically nothing but convention. But we human beings have no other counterparts that compare with such a gigantic physical structure under the sea. Method of formation. We can speculate about how they were made. The simplest theory would be that something as wide as 6 kilometers traveled a long way and left its tracks. We could call such gigantic entities crawlers. This is crawler theory. The beauty of this theory is that it is physically and scientifically consistent. It is only extrapolation or enlargement of mechanism in which a motorbike leaves tracks on the muddy ground. The greatest drawback is that the enlargement is so disproportionate that we can hardly imagine that a vehicle as wide as 6 kilometers moving on the seafloor. Even without moving, it is almost impossible for us to imagine an entity as wide as 6 kilometers, say, as large as a city. Some people may get excited to imagine such crawlers moving around on the sea floor, but others may be afraid instinctively. Actually, most people reject such a possibility reflexively out of fear. They try to deny such a possibility by all means desperately. Strange to say, not everyone welcomes the truth. Rather, ordinary people don't welcome the truth. So this video is not for everyone, but for only a handful of people. Width of lines. Let's check the width of lines. How many kilometers wide are they? There are two widths here, thick and wider one and thinner one. We are going to determine the width of the thick one first. Average of 3 samples is 6.3 kilometers. So it would be safe to say that the thick lines have a width of 6 kilometers on average. Thin lines are difficult to measure, but we would be allowed to think they must be 1/5 or 1/6 of thick lines. If the ratio of the widths is 1/5, the width of thin line would be 1.2 kilometers. If 1/6, 1 kilometer. Either way, the width of thinner lines is at least 1 kilometer. There must be some reason to make such huge formation. It is very unlikely that it is really meant to be a maze to amuse people like us. Thick line is about 6 kilometers wide and thin line is at least 1 kilometer wide. They form a very complicated design, which we want to call a maze. Something as wide as 6 kilometers must have crawled on the sea floor following a calculated plan. It traveled straight ahead more than 5 kilometers and suddenly stopped and turned at a right angle, making a huge square U-turn. And the crawler resumes the straight travel of more than 500 kilometers and on and on. But the crawler sometimes turns not at a right angle, but at irregular angles. We don't know on what principle the crawler travels. It's not a drawing on a sheet of paper, but a gigantic civil engineering feat spanning more than 500 kilometers. The line suddenly breaks in the middle. The formation is imperfect as a maze. And the turns are not always at a right angle. Such seemingly imperfect elements give situational reality to the formation. We are, at least I am, completely at a loss how to understand this huge formation. My job here is to show this as a fact, which is very relevant to our existence in the universe. Do we have any counterparts on the land? Please remember that these lines are drawn on the sea floor, not on the land. Do you know similar lines on the land? Lines as wide as 6 kilometers which stretch hundreds of kilometers. Even a line with only 1 kilometer width is hard to find on the land we see. Can you name such wide lines or roads made by human beings on the land? Human beings has never built roads even as wide as 1 kilometer in the history. Have you ever heard of 1 kilometer wide roads? If there's such a road on the land, it must have been already Guinnessed long ago. We don't know who made these lines or what civilization produced them. No matter whether we know or we don't know, they exist out there. Atlantic connection. This Atlantic maze is not an isolated formation in South Atlantic Ocean. As you can see, similar formations are strung together along very geometrically cracked lines. These fissures are mostly connected in a right angle. This Atlantic connection is too regular to be natural and suspiciously long. Right-angle fissures are too many to have been made only by chance or by natural forces. We have seen lots of huge traces of civil engineering on the sea floor through the series of seafloor archaeology, 1 to 7. They have shown that there is at least one intelligent race with tremendous technology which surpasses that of humans by far. We don't know the limit of their technology or power. We have no idea about how much they are capable, how high their civilization soars above ours. Neighbor in the basement. Very few people have ever suspected that there might be other intellectual races other than humans on this very planet. Who suspected there might be somebody living in the basement of the very same house? Now I have to point out a possibility that there might be inhabitants, an intelligent race which has tremendous civilization not on the land but under the water on this planet. We human beings seem to have been in almost complete ignorance about our neighbors or true inhabitants of this planet. We humans have been looking for our neighbors outside the Earth. Actually, we don't have to look outside the Earth to find our neighbors. The word extraterrestrials itself has been a great myth. The word extraterrestrial epitomizes our fundamental misunderstanding about our position in the universe. The word automatically blinded us from a possibility that in fact we are not alone even at home. Of course, even without the word, we have been completely ignorant of our neighbor's existence on the same planet. It is very unlikely that we are predecessors here on the Earth because the scale of traces of their civilization is far more evident and larger disproportionately than ours. We human beings, as terrestrial animals, tend to think that the land is the better environment than in the sea or in the air. But such land-centrism is too naive to see the true fact. The land, marginal area. Our land-centrism is rooted in our minds so deep that we can't even imagine life in the deep sea. The land on Earth might be very marginal area compared to dominant and rich aquatic environment. The land is the environment too familiar to us humans to doubt. But the land might be very marginal, very poor and even very dangerous area in the eye of aquatic inhabitants, just as we consider mountainous area as poor habitat. Why not live in water? In the universe, Earth must be known as the most watery planet in the solar system. So why not live in water? Why not build civilization in water? Most of the reasons we human beings have lived and have built civilization on the land are simply that we are terrestrial animals. Ants never think of building their kingdom in water. Fish never think of building their kingdom on the land. We have never compared terrestrial life and aquatic life seriously and detachedly. Life itself evolved in water. Every living thing cannot live without water. So why leave water? There's no reason for a life form to leave water in order to attain intelligence. Evolution of life was not fettered by aquatic life at all. Aquatic life has not been fetters for the development of intelligence. Most of life forms have stayed in the water. Some tried terrestrial life, but returned to aquatic life wisely after all. Planet of water. Earth is often called planet of water. About 70% of this planet is covered with water, and there's no such water-rich planet in the solar system. It is clear that life was born in the sea on this planet. And even now there are far more living things in terms of weight or biomass in the sea than on the ground. In fact, the weight ratio of living things in the sea and those on the ground is 9:1. We seldom think of this fact because we human beings ourselves are land animals. Our way of thinking is so land-centrically grooved that we can't see the objective fact detachedly.